Hey, welcome back to the Let's Ditch Misophonia channel. In today's video, I want to talk about a simple belief change process that can be really valuable when there is a particular belief that is really keeping you stuck in the suffering spiral. So for example, if you feel like someone should be doing something different or they should know better, and that belief is keeping you trapped, we're going to talk about how you can move out of that space and maybe dive into a different belief that's going to better serve you. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Before we dive into today's video though, I want to let you know that I am hosting a free 3-day live training event. So it's going to be on Thursday, Tuesday, and Thursday, June 13th, 18th, and 20th. And if you can't join us live, be sure to still sign up for this event because you will get access to the replays if you sign up. So find that link in the show description. It is going to be the 3 keys to misophonia relief that are different, easier, and more effective than anything you've tried before. And if you've watched on this channel my 3 keys to misophonia relief video, this training is going to expand on that because each key is getting its own day in the training. So we're going to dive a lot deeper to help you lessen your trigger sounds and alleviate your suffering from misophonia. So make sure you check out the description and sign up for that free training. Again, our first day is the 13th. If you can't join us live, you will get access to the replays when you register. So now let's dive into today's video. Let's dive into a very simple belief change. All right, so I am going to use an example from someone that I actually spoke with recently. So this is a real life belief that has been keeping someone stuck in the misophonia suffering spiral. And that belief is, if this person in my life didn't do this thing, then everything would be fine. So obviously I'm keeping it a bit generalized, but let's create something more specific. So let's say that my husband is making a particular noise that is driving me crazy. So maybe I'm trying not to give it too specific of an example because I don't want to create a new trigger for anyone. But let's say that I'm eating with my husband and he makes a particular noise at the table that's driving me crazy. So maybe I'm holding on to this belief that if my husband would just stop making that noise while we're eating, then everything would be fine. Like that's all he has to do. If he would just stop, then I wouldn't feel this way. Then I wouldn't be angry and we wouldn't be arguing and we wouldn't be mad at each other. Like it's all his fault. If he could just stop doing this, it would be fine. That's an example of a belief that is keeping you trapped because what your brain has decided is that this particular thing has to change in order for you to get relief, that this is the only way. And that's just not very helpful because we know from experience that changing another person or changing the environment around us is very often impossible and usually isn't very helpful because let's say that my husband stops doing that, there's probably going to be another noise that pops up that now is driving me crazy, right? There's going to be something else that catches my attention. And so the reason that I say that that belief is keeping you stuck is because it's creating like this either or situation. Either he stops doing that or I'm going to remain miserable. So once we can identify that belief, oh, that's the thing that's keeping me stuck, now we can do something to loosen that belief so that we can actually detach it and install something that's going to be more useful. And I've talked about this in my previous videos. It's one of my favorite questions to ask myself. It's one of my favorite questions that I ask my clients. And that is this useful? It can be a thought, a behavior, a belief. Asking yourself, is this useful? So thinking about this belief, if my husband would just stop making this noise, then everything would be better. Is that belief useful? Is it serving me? I'm not asking you if the belief is true or false. I'm not asking you if it's right or wrong or good or bad. I'm simply asking you, is it useful? Is it serving you? It may be true. Maybe it is true that if my husband, again, this is theoretical, if my husband just stopped making that noise, maybe it is true. Maybe then everything would be fine. But is that belief serving me? Probably not, because all it's doing is festering that resentment inside of me. And that resentment is then triggered anytime I hear that noise, and it causes this whole spiral of suffering. Why is he doing that? How does he not know? This is so frustrating. If only he could stop. And it's keeping you trapped. So once we've identified, okay, this is the belief that's keeping me stuck, and then we've identified, okay, yeah, it's not really serving me, how can we shift that belief to something that is going to be more useful for you? This is where we can start to play around with some alternatives. And there are so many ways to approach a belief change. By the way, there are so many amazing modalities, but I'm going to keep it really simple for this video because I don't want you to have to dive into NLP and unconscious mind training to shift a belief for yourself. So we're going to keep it really simple today. So let's start by exploring alternatives. And again, we're not saying that these alternatives are good, bad, true, false, right, wrong. We're just exploring some alternatives that might help us get to the same end result. So speaking of end result, it helps to know what you are working toward. So in this case, what is it that you desire? And you might say, oh, well, I desire that my husband stops making this noise. Well, no. You desire him to stop making that noise because you want a certain outcome. So let's go a step further. What is that outcome? It's probably to have dinner with your husband in peace and not be super frustrated or annoyed. So if we know that the end goal is peacefully hanging out with husband, now we can explore some alternatives that might help us get to that end result in a way that's going to be less combative, in a way that's going to be present less resistance for us. So one option is what we have already believed, which is if my husband stopped making this noise, everything would be fine. What else could we play around with? Maybe if I wore headphones at the table, everything would be fine. Maybe if I just weren't bothered by this noise, everything would be fine. Maybe if we didn't eat together anymore, things would be fine. Maybe if we play some music while we're eating, everything would be fine. Maybe if we watch TV while we're eating, everything could be fine. Maybe if I mimic that noise back at him every time he makes it, then I'll be less frustrated and everything will be fine. You see what we're doing here? We're just playing around, we're just experimenting, and we're introducing some alternatives. I'm not saying that you have to actually pick any of these alternatives. I'm not saying that any of these are the right answer. All we're doing is we're loosening the grip, the death grip that original belief currently has on your mind. Because if you are stuck in that original belief, oh, if my husband would just stop doing this, everything would be fine, we've already decided that that isn't serving you. And so if you're stuck there, it's not likely that you're going to experience any relief. So all we're doing by brainstorming these alternatives is just loosening that grip and showing mind that there are some other options available that could be even better for us and help us reach that end goal of having a relaxing dinner with our husband, or again, whatever the scenario is for you. So where do we go from here? We've experimented with some of these alternatives. What do we do next? Here is where we get to try on these beliefs, and think of this almost like we're trying on a hat. And sometimes like a ball cap, for example, you might have, maybe you have the snaps in the back, like a snapback, or maybe you have the what is that? Where it's like, you know what I'm talking about? Where there's like a buckle and you're kind of like adjusting the strap. Anyway, imagine these beliefs like you're trying on a hat, okay? So let's say that you decide, okay, I'm gonna go to the dinner table and this time I'm gonna put in earplugs while I'm eating with my husband and I'm gonna see what happens. Do I get to that end result? Do I get to a place where I can have a peaceful dinner with my husband? Maybe you do that, you go to the table, you have your earplugs in, and things are good, things are peaceful, but you don't really feel much connection with him because you can't hear everything. So in this case, you've tried on that hat and maybe the strap is still a little bit too big. So then you go to the next idea. Maybe you sit down and have this meal with your husband and every time he makes that noise, you mimic it. But then your husband feels like you're making fun of him or you're being dramatic or whatever else, right? And it's still causing some tension. Well, now you've tried on the hat and it's a little bit too tight, right? So we get to just try on and play with these different beliefs to see how they are serving us and to see which is going to get us closer to that outcome that we desire, which is having a peaceful meal with our husband, or again, whatever scenario it is that you are currently in. Now, the really sneaky thing, remember how I said that I am not saying that any of these alternatives are the right or wrong answer. We're simply just experimenting. There's a sneaky trick behind this, and I've talked about this in previous videos. The things that we go out of our way to avoid, our mind reads as dangerous or not good to do. And the things that we intentionally move toward, mind starts to see as good or good to do, even if that thing that you're leaning into is actually really dangerous or could be potentially fatal. So for example, I love roller coasters. I love them. And so I intentionally go to amusement parks and get on the scariest rides because it's a thrill for me. There are also other people in the world who are terrified of roller coasters and wouldn't be caught dead on one of them, okay? So because I'm leaning into it, even though roller coasters could potentially be dangerous, something could go wrong. The harness could come undone, the straps could fail, something could happen to the track, all sorts of things. It's very rare, but it could happen. Even though it is potentially life-threatening and it's my mind's job to keep me alive, because I intentionally seek it out, my mind now sees this as, oh, this thing is good to do. This is exciting. Another thing that I go out of my way to avoid, and I've talked about this as well, I used to be really, really afraid of anything medical. So getting simple blood work, I would pass out, I would cry, I would freak out, I would avoid it. So when I finally did go in to do it, it would be even scarier than if I had just got it done right away. So now I have learned that if I ever need to get any kind of test done, I book it right away, I book the soonest appointment, and I go in and I get it over with. Getting my blood drawn is not some big scary thing. It's not life-threatening. I'm not gonna die. It's very unlikely that anything's going to go wrong. And it's actually something that's serving me because getting the results can help me be even healthier. And yet because I was going out of my way to avoid it, my mind created it as this big scary thing, death, stay away, danger, danger, danger. And so it was creating all of these emotions in me anytime I would go to do it. So when I talk about this sneaky thing of experimenting, what are we really doing? All we're doing by playing with these different beliefs, so first of all, we're loosening up that original belief that we know isn't serving us. And then secondly, what we're doing is leaning into that noise that used to bother the shit out of you. Okay? So again, we're not really trying to find a new belief that's better. Yes, it's part of the process, but what we're really doing is showing mind, hey, I'm intentionally moving toward this noise again and again and again. It must not be that bad. It must not be that dangerous, because every time you do it, you survive. You're still alive. You've made it through and you're choosing to move toward that noise. Now, this may seem scary. This may seem intimidating because you don't want to put yourself in a position where you're exposed to something that has frustrated you. So this is where we can employ another very sneaky trick. And that trick is mental rehearsal. We can go into that environment without actually stepping into that environment. So what this does, your mind doesn't necessarily differentiate between imagination and reality. So if I tell you, for example, if you're a visual person and I tell you to close your eyes and kind of go to your happy place, and you go to that place and you really envision, like for me, one of my happy places is Vermilion, Ohio. Being on the beach, feeling the sand between my toes, walking along the rocks, hearing the waves. I'm not even a beach person, but that place just has so many amazing memories for me. And when I really tap into that, I can smell the lake and I can feel the sand. When I really tap into all of my senses, it brings back that sense of happiness and joy and tranquility. And yet right now, I'm creating a video. I'm not actually in Vermilion, Ohio at the beach. I'm here with you in this video. My mind isn't thinking though, oh, this is just a memory. My mind is engaging in that as if I'm there. And that's why it's creating those emotions within me. And so we can use mental rehearsal. And the advantage of this is, yes, your mind feels like you're actually sitting down at that table, but what it does is it gives you more control. Because if you in the real world go to sit down with your husband or whatever scenario this is, you don't have control over that environment. But when you are choosing to imagine that, you get to control the narrative. And so it's a way for you to move toward that noise in a way where you still have control and you feel safe. So you can mentally rehearse and play with and experiment these different beliefs before actually going to the table in the real world. Now, again, if any of this seems confusing or maybe overwhelming, or you're like, okay, this is amazing, but how the hell do I do this myself? This is why I'm a coach, because it can be so valuable to have someone outside of yourself walk you through these things and be there with you each step of the way. Also, using these different tricks and knowing how to work with the mind and speak with the mind and create kind of these belief changes to something that's going to be more valuable, it does take some practice. It does take studying and knowledge and practice and experimentation. And that's something that I've spent years doing, and also a lot of money as well into my education to be able to support you in doing these things to lessen your trigger sounds, alleviate your suffering from misophonia, and experience more joy in your life. It's these kinds of strategies and modalities that have allowed me to improve so many areas of my life, including my experience with misophonia. A lot of these modalities I used before I ever even touched my misophonia. So they really can improve so many areas of your life, which is why I love working with my clients and getting to support them. And of course, focusing specifically on misophonia, but my clients experience results in many other areas of their lives too. So if you're wanting support and actually walking through this and getting familiar with this process and actually experiencing transformation and getting to live more peacefully, more calmly, then again, make sure you check out the video description and sign up for my free 3-day live training, because we're going to be diving into things just like this. I'm going to guide you through everything so you can experience the transformation throughout our time together. And again, if you can't join us live, make sure you still sign up, because you'll get access to the recordings. Thank you so much for watching another video on the Let's Ditch Misophonia channel, and I'll catch you in the next one.